My name is Addison James, and this is my final exam for Psychology 101. Here is my index and what I will be talking about today. Foundations of Psychology and the Scientific Method. Why is common sense not enough? Common sense is not always enough because it's based on personal experiences. A more accurate method that we use is the scientific method. The scientific method relies on testing hypotheses to uncover truths that common sense might miss. Why is introspection unreliable? Introspection is systematic self-observation of one's conscious experiences. Introspection is unreliable because it lacks independent verification. One's conscious awareness might not accurately reflect the actual mental process occurring, and someone might struggle to accurately describe or even be aware of the exact mechanisms of their thoughts and feelings. Major schools, models, and specialties in psychology. Specialties in psychology. What is the biopsychological model? The bios the the biopsychosocial model suggests that psych, psychological, and cultural factors all play a significant role in human behavior and mental processes. The model proposes that a person's health or psychological state is not caused by any single factor. What are major specialties in psychology? The major specialties in psychology are clinical counseling psychology, which focuses on mental health treatment, cognitive psychology, which studies mental processes, social psychology, which studies how people interact and influence with each other, developmental psychology, which studies lifespan changes, biological neuropsychology, which studies the brain's impact on behavior, and finally, organizational psychology, which applies principles to the workplace. Cognitive psychology and memory. How do cognitive psychologists study mental processes? Cognitive psychologists use objective empirical evidence to analyze and study complex mental processes, including memory and problem solving. They rely on laboratory experiences, reaction time measurement, and error analysis. How do we learn to think? We learn to think through cognitive development, which means building and changing mental structures as we experience the world. As explained by Jen Piaget, our thinking skills grow from basic sensor sensor motor interactions as babies to using symbols in logic in childhood, and finally to abstract, hypothetical, and systematic reasoning in our teenage years from operational thought. This learning process is shaped by experiences, what we already know, and cognitive tools like problem solving and memory. Biology of behavior. What is behavior? How does the brain connect to it? Behavior is any action that has an organism that an organism does that can be directly or indirectly observed, recorded, and which varies from actions like running or talking to activities like thinking or psychology responses. The brain and behavior are connected because the brain is the primary organ that controls processes in our behaviors. What are neurotransmitters? Developmental psychology. How do heredity and environment affect development throughout life? What are major milestones in physical development? Milestones of physical development usually occur in a generally predictable sequence across the lifespan. These milestones begin with motor development, such as an infant holding their hand up, rolling over, sitting up, and walking. During childhood, there's a rapid development of fine and gross motor skills, such as running and writing. The next milestone is puberty, and it is marked by a growth spurt and the development of secondary sex characters. How does emotional development proceed? Emotional development proceeds from basic emotions in infancy to a highly regulated emotional life in adulthood. Early development involves the emergence of self-conscious emotions such as shame and pride during toddler years. As children grow, they develop emotional competence, the ability to understand, express, and regulate emotions. Throughout life, this process continues as individuals refine their emotions. What is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning is a learning theory where voluntary actions are strengthened by rewards or weakened by punishments. It was developed by B.F. Skinner, and it suggests that organisms learn to connect their actions with consequences, which affects their future behavior. The main idea is that consequences shape behavior. True or false? Pavlov researched operant conditioning. This is false. Ian Pavlov is famous for his work on classical conditioning, which involves linking two stimuli to create an involuntary learn response, like dogs salivating when they hear a bell. Upper conditioning is mainly studied by B.F. Skinner, as I stated before. What is observational learning, and how does it connect with operating classical conditioning? Observational learning is a way people learn new behaviors or information by watching and copying someone else. In upper conditioning, this is important because people see what happens to the person they're watching, like getting a reward or punishment. It can affect how they act in the future. It also helps classical conditioning by showing how a model reacts emotionally to something, like fearing a certain thing, which can make the observer feel scared. How does group membership affect behavior? Group membership affects individual behavior because it shapes identity, promotes conformity, and influences decision making. Together, we seek belonging to feel a sense of pride and self-esteem, which then adjusts options to fit in. Group settings can enhance performance or reduce effort. Groups can intensify attitudes and create shared responsibility. How do social situations affect how we think about ourselves and others? Social situations significantly mold our self-concept through mechanisms such as social comparison and the looking glass self, which influence how we perceive ourselves and others. These processes guide our self-esteem and social perception, often through the use of social schemas and attribution. Ethics, leadership, and personal development. How can behaving ethically help me personally and professionally? Being ethical builds trust and credibility, which leads to healthier relationships and self-respect. At work, it helps you build a good reputation, avoid legal problems, and is crucial for effective leadership, teamwork, and benefiting others, which can lead to long-term career success. How can leadership skills help me personally and professionally? Leadership skills are essentially advanced forms of communication, goal setting, and influence. Professionally, they enable you to motivate teams, they delegate tasks efficiently, and guide projects to successful completion. Personally, skills like conflict resolution and inspiring a positive outlook help you build stronger, healthy relationships with friends and family and effectively manage your own life goals. How can grit and perseverance help me personally and professionally? Grit is a combination of passion and unwavering perseverance towards long-term goals. It's the ability to keep working hard and stay committed even after you fail repeatedly professionally. Professionally, grit predicts higher achievement because it enables you to master complex skills. Personally, it builds immense resilience, allowing you to bounce back from setbacks and maintain effort towards personal fitness or relationship goals. Stress, coping, and health. What is a stressor and what determines severity? A stressor is any event or situation that requires a person to make an adjustment to or adaptation. Its severity is determined by several factors: its magnitude or intensity, its duration, and critically, the individual's perception of their ability to control or cope with it. Unpredictable or uncontrollable stressors are typically perceived as more severe. What are some types of stressors? Psychologists categorize stressors into three main types. Catastrophes are unpredictable, large-scale events that are widespread damage and fear. Major life changes are significant, often disruptive events that force major adjustment. And finally, daily hassles are minor and persistent annoyances in like traffic or annoying coworkers that accumulate to erode well-being. Abnormal psychology and mental disorders. How is abnormality defined? Abnormality is psychology, and psychology is generally defined using the 3Ds approach because no single factor works alone. These include deviance behavior that's far outside cultural norms, distress, causing personal suffering or emotional pain, and dysfunction, interfering with a person's ability to live a normal, healthy life at school, work, or social. If a pattern or a behavior fits these criteria and is persistent, it is considered a psychological disorder. What are the major mental disorders? The major mental disorders are organized into categories in the DSM-5. These include common ones like depressive and bipolar disorders, various anxieties, various anxiety disorders, including phobias and JD. Disorders related to trauma like PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and severe disorders like schizophrenia, spectrum. All of these conditions impact a person's thought process, emotional stability, and overall functioning in distinct ways. Psychotherapy and treatment. How did psychotherapy originate? Psychotherapy has ancient roots and practices like healing rituals and in the talking cure. The formal term was coined in the late 1800s, and Sigmund Freud founded psychoanalysts shortly after, greatly influencing the 20th century psychological treatment. Is Freudian psychoanalyst still used? Classical Freudian psychoanalysis is less prevalent prevalent now, especially in academic psychology, due to its lengthy, expensive nature and lack of substantial empirical support for its original theories. However, psychodynamic therapies, which are derived from psychoanalysts, remain in use. Applied psychology. How is psychology applied in business and industry? Industrial organization psychology applies psychological principles to the workplace to enhance personal selection, training, performance, appraisal, motivation, and organizational structure. What effects do natural, physical, and social environments have on humans? The environment influences stress, mood, and behavior. Natural settings reduce stress. Crowding increases arousal and stress, while social support buffers negative effects. What effects what effect are humans having on the natural environment? Environmental psychology will study the interaction between human and environment. Humans impact the environment through pollution and resource depletion, often motivated by psychological factors such as tragedy of the commons. LGBTQ in psychology and identity. True or false? Sex and sexuality are the same. This statement is false. Sex refers to the biological and psychological characteristics, including features like chromosomes and anatomy. Typically, sex defines someone as either male or female. On the other hand, sexuality is a much broader concept that covers all sorts of things, such as how we feel, think, and act when it comes to sex, including who we're attracted to. Although sex and sexuality are both related, they aren't the same thing. True or false? Non-binary is a boy who dresses opposite and likes the same sex. False. This statement confuses two different concepts. Non-binary is a gender identity. It means someone who doesn't identify as either male or female. The second part of the statement makes sense of gender identity and gender expression, which relates to the style of dress and sexual orientation, which refers to the gender you are attracted to. True or false? Andro androgynous people feel how they feel sexuality varies. This statement is true. They describe andro androgyny describes someone whose gender expression includes both traditionally masculine and traditionally female traits, like a woman with a masculine style. Importantly, one's gender is entirely independent of their sexuality, which in the example given is bisexual, attracted to both men and women. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are my references that support my claims. Thank you.